She'll be back in the pulpit next Sunday. This service is brought to you by members of UCH's worship team. I am Gene Schaefer, my pronouns are he, him, and I am pleased to serve as worship associate today. Leading our service today is Susan Morrison-Hebel, and we'll also be hearing a reflection from Dennis Ajut. Our music today will be provided by Dennis Ajut and a robust group of our celebration singers. We recognize that individuals of all ages and abilities have different needs. Piano is Jonathan Hand. Did I say Jonathan? The piano is Jonathan Hand, sorry. I mispronounced it and didn't even get the name right. We recognize that individuals of all ages and abilities have different needs during the service. You are welcome to step into the living room and in the back of the sanctuary and grab a fidget, engage in drawing, move around, and stand or sit wherever you are comfortable. Please see a greeter for assistance if needed. May you each know that you are welcome in this house of peace, and may our worship and fellowship this morning touch your heart, mind, and spirit.
We acknowledge that we in the western suburbs inhabit areas that are traditional territories of indigenous peoples. As people trying to live into a more just world, we have a responsibility to acknowledge the history and legacy of colonialism, the harm done to Native peoples, and also work to repair that harm. We light this chalice today with these words by Margaret Weiss. Come into this place with your whole self, the parts that are raw and exposed, the part that is beaming with joy, the part that is seeking the truth, the new, the possibility. Come into this place, open your heart, lay down your burden, lift up your hope for something new to happen. Come into this place with fellow travelers on the journey, some faces new and others familiar, and all welcoming you here now to this moment. Come, let us worship together. And I invite you now to rise as you're able and join us in singing hymn number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. The words are on your order of service, or you can use the hymnal. We enter this space bringing with us joys, concerns, challenges, and blessings. So if you have something either weighing or dancing on your heart this morning, you are invited to come up and share with us, and then drop a pebble into the water to honor your joy or sorrow. I'm going to start. My joy is sitting right over there. Deborah Stillman is visiting us from North Carolina. Doing a really big pebble.
Hi, my name is Paula. So Dean announced that today is Sunflower Sunday, and it also happens to be, and we're doing it in honor of my mom's birthday. I won't say how old she would have been today because she would have hated that. But yeah, August 17th is her actual birthday, so if you can keep her in your thoughts. For those of you who are new or visiting, my mom's name was Janice. She passed in 2021, and she loved this church.
Hi, I'm Dave. I led the service last week, and I talked about a little health scare that I had a couple of years ago and forgot to say what I had. And so many people have asked, and that's my joy. It's like so many people are so cool and say, what do you have? So 2 years ago, I talked about a very stressful time at work, and I was ended up hospitalized, and it was a bleeding ulcer. And my other joy is I've found ways to deal with that stress. So.
I'm Suzanne, and this is for a friend who's going through a very difficult time right now.
Let's take a moment now to pause and think about the joys and sorrows that are left unspoken. We have the wonderful opportunity now to hear from the Celebration Singers who said we can't wait until September to sing again. So thank you to them.
So this is a reflection written by my father, Dennis, who is playing guitar for us today. When I decided to do Sunflower Sunday, I thought I might talk about heliotropism, or how sunflowers are attracted to the sun. So I Googled facts about sunflowers. Yes, they are attracted to the sun, but overnight, they somehow reset themselves to face east. As the plant matures, the flower head stops rotating and faces east. Why it behaves this way, we are not sure. What we think of as petals are actually sterile flowers which produce pollen to attract pollinators. The dark center is made of hundreds of tiny flowers called florets, which form into a Fibonacci spiral, just like in seashells and hurricanes. When pollinated, they form seeds. What I did not find out is why we are so attracted to sunflowers. As your plant grows, look at it once or twice a day and see what you discover.
Our reading is a quote of Albert Einstein, and it's from the May 2nd, 1955 Time magazine article, Old Man's Advice to Youth, Never Lose a Holy Curiosity by William Miller. Do not stop to think about the reason for what you are doing, about why you are questioning. The important thing is to not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery each day. Never lose a holy curiosity. Try not to become a man of success, but rather to try to become one of value. He is considered successful in our day who gets more out of life than he puts in, but a man of value will give more than he receives. I hesitated to include this because it can seem to have become trite lately to quote Einstein. In fact, many of Einstein's quotes weren't Einstein quotes at all. That real famous one about insanity that politicians love shouting at each other, never said it. So he's become kind of like the Stephen Wright of illusory saliency. If you're unfamiliar with Stephen Wright, he was a master of one-liners such as, "When I was a kid, we had a quick sandbox. I was an only child eventually." I thought a lot of curiosity this week, and it occurs to me that curiosity is the default mechanism for how we interact with our universe. So who here has pets? Cats, dogs, rabbits? If they see something new, they immediately check it out. We have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and they seldom feel comfortable in each other's presence, but you put a novel object in the middle of the kitchen, and they all immediately converge upon it, a united congregation of curiosity. And this seems to be a deeply embedded mammalian trait. And it might be easy to say, of course they check it out, that's just natural, but that's sort of the point. If you put a plastic strange thing in the middle of a fish tank or an iguana terrarium, they usually don't pay it any mind. But it certainly seems like mammals as a whole will give it at least a cursory, what is this thing doing here, spot check. I'll have to study this in more detail, but it appears to be such a fundamental component of the progression of mammalian intelligence that we perceive it as inherent in the formulation of our world, of our understanding of the world. Or at least it used to be. For while most of us still stand in awe of childlike curiosity, I'm afraid most of us lose some of that as we become older. It at least dulls and becomes more narrow in scope. Obviously, we keep some of it. A couple weeks ago, I went on a deep dive of how cephalopods, which are octopuses, cuttlefish, squids, how their eyes work. And if you don't know, I am not a marine biologist. So this will have very little impact on my life, apart from now, it's just a little bit harder to make friends at parties. But curiosity can take a parabolic path. As it dulls, or at least it becomes more narrow as we age into modern adulthood, it can also sharpen and broaden as we recognize that we, well, just are not as smart as we thought we were. I know for me personally, I used to be very smart, and now I know very little, and I am much happier that way. So I'll leave you today with an avatar of the height of adult curiosity. It is the Mars Curiosity rover. And it's made out of Legos, because just because you're a rocket scientist does not mean you cannot build a spaceship.
Good morning, I'm Susan. My pronouns are she and her. I'm guessing that most of you know that the source of the title of my talk, Curiouser and Curiouser, you know where that comes from? Alice in Wonderland, yeah. At the beginning of chapter 2 of Alice in Wonderland, Alice is perplexed to realize that her body, shrunken in chapter 1, was now stretching out. Here's the passage. "Curiouser and curiouser," cried Alice. She was so much surprised that for the moment she quite forgot how to speak good English. "Now I'm opening up like the largest telescope that ever was. Goodbye, feet." For when she looked down at her feet, they seemed to be almost out of sight. "Oh, my poor little feet, I wonder who will put your shoes and stockings on for you now." What I love about this passage is that it illustrates how curiosity can discombobulate us and simultaneously invite us to look at the world anew. In the story, Alice is at times tearful. In fact, later in the chapter, she cries a pool of tears through which she swims to the next part of her adventure. And she's often startled and unsettled by those she encounters along the way, but she's also resilient and adaptable and perceptive and so smart, and at times quite joyful, because she leans into this curious experience rather than turns away from it. It's no accident that author Lewis Carroll's heroine is a child, a young, inquisitive protagonist who seems to find her situation both discombobulating, well, who wouldn't, but also intriguing. She quickly adjusts to this fascinating journey of discovery about the world and ultimately about herself. Indeed, early in the text, Alice has a sort of existential epiphany when she says, "Who in the world am I? Ah, that's the great puzzle." Isn't that the great puzzle for each of us? Not just who am I, but who in the world am I? It's important to acknowledge, though, as Jean has suggested, that we sometimes see a child's curiosity as perhaps charming, but maybe silly and irrelevant, maybe even annoying. Anyone who's been on the receiving end of a 4-year-old's persistent questions knows what I'm talking about. Why is the sky blue? What is love? Why is the basketball round? Why do I have 5 toes instead of 3 toes? Can we please go to space and touch the stars? Sadly, as kids advance through school and toward adulthood, the correct answers often become more celebrated than the compelling questions. As UC Berkeley psychologist Scott Shigeoka puts it, we live in a culture and world that prioritizes answers over questions. Knowingness is seen as strength, while questioning is viewed as weakness. So we limit our understanding of curiosity by talking about it as a force for extracting information, as if that's its most meaningful purpose. And in that context, when we accumulate the correct answers, we usually are rewarded with concrete evidence of measurable accomplishment, like good grades, for instance, or of socially admired validation, such as awards or degrees or promotions. It's no wonder then that deep curiosity, which engenders rich but complex and perhaps seemingly impractical questions about ourselves, our communities, our world, and beyond, becomes something we subdue rather than an attitude to nurture. But what are we missing out on by failing to ask such questions, by neglecting to activate curiosity that may surely enrich our own lives and therefore the lives of those that we encounter? What do we overlook when we prioritize finite answers over intriguing questions? 19th century Unitarian minister and co-founder of the American Transcendentalist movement, Ralph Waldo Emerson, distrusted what he satirically referred to as the wisdom of adulthood, which he felt dulled our senses and interfered with our potential to experience the world directly and fully. A persistent theme in Emerson's writings and lectures is the idea that an open and receptive, childlike perspective, not unlike Alice's, is necessary for personal and spiritual growth, while conventional learning, which is necessarily, and we accumulate it as we grow, can attenuate experience and embolden what he calls mean egotism. Mean egotism manifests as a finite, inflexible identity filled to the brim with views and opinions suitable primarily only for polite society. The transcendentalist notion echoes in the Zen Buddhist concept shoshin, a term which translates to mean beginner's mind. Buddhist teacher Jack Kornfield writes this: "The wisdom of uncertainty frees us from what Buddhist psychology calls the thicket of views and opinions. Seeing misery in those who cling to views, a wise person should not adopt them. For those who grasp after views and opinions wander around the world annoying people." Kornfield also quotes the work of Rachel Carson, the great naturalist, who wrote this: "A child's world is fresh and new and beautiful, full of wonder and excitement. It is our misfortune that for most of us, that clear-eyed vision, that true instinct for what is beautiful and awe-inspiring is dimmed and even lost before we reach adulthood." And Eleanor Roosevelt says this: "I think, at a child's birth, if a mother could ask a fairy godmother to endow their child with the most useful gift, that gift would be curiosity." A useful gift indeed. When I was a teenager, a family friend once drew for me a circle and said, "Inside this circle is what I know now, and outside of it is all I don't know." And then he drew a larger circle and a larger circle, stressing that we can never know what there is to know. I found that prospect intriguing, wondrous. I still do. But he found it dispiriting and depressing. Curiosity exists because of the unknowable intrinsic in this world. And that world can seem unsettling, even frightening to us, can't it? For curiosity requires us to admit vulnerability, to admit error, to acknowledge change and multiple perspectives. It requires us to be open to possibility beyond our awareness and understanding. So often, especially in times of strife and grief and fear, sound familiar, we set aside curiosity for the comfort of conviction. We know we're right and they're wrong. We know what's safe. We know who and what will reinforce our sense of security. We prefer stasis to change. We find solace in complacency and predictability. We choose to trust messengers we're familiar with rather than to consider viewpoints unfamiliar to us. But studies show that those of us who suppress curiosity, those of us who refuse to nurture the curiosity that is naturally within us, are more likely to be not only ignorant of important and relevant facts and ideas, but more likely to be lonely, isolated, and unable or unwilling to develop deep relationships or to ponder potentially enriching spiritual or philosophical questions. And yet, so many stories show us that curiosity can be a lifeline, a persistent hum nudging us to consider what could be. In her moving memoir titled The Choice, Holocaust survivor and psychologist Dr. Edith Eger recalls that she fiercely protected her sense of curiosity while imprisoned with her sister in various concentration camps, including Auschwitz. She remembers the moment that she realized that, quote, "We can choose what the horror teaches us, to become bitter in our grief and fear, hostile, paralyzed, or we can choose to hold on to the childlike part of us, the lively and curious part, the part that is innocent." Cultivating curiosity requires much of us. It's far easier to be passive, to surrender to circumstances, to stick with what we know. Dr. Eger's story emphasizes that she had to make that choice over and over and over again to hold on to the curious part of herself. And even though most of us have not endured an experience as traumatic as Dr. Eger's, we may perhaps unwittingly put up roadblocks that prevent us from engaging with curiosity. Here's how Dr. Shigeyuka explains these barriers, which he calls the ABCs. We attach to assumptions, biases, and certainty. Because, he writes, these are automatic human tendencies that help us make sense of the world, and they also provide us with a feeling of security. Letting go means we might have to admit that we don't have control, that we can be wrong, and that we sometimes do not know something. Not to mention, being right and righteous brings social status and power in today's twisted culture, end quote. In fact, Shigeyuka argues that we are now in an era of incuriosity, which he believes has weakened us individually and collectively. For instance, rather than engaging in tough topics, working towards understanding and prioritizing relationships within ourselves and others, we are more likely to shame, judge, and dehumanize the people we disagree with, rather than work toward productive and healthy conflict. And reviewing as in re-seeing our assumptions, biases, and certainties can be frightening in an age such as this. So we double down on them. As a result, our potential for spiritual and emotional growth is stunted, our social and cultural divisions reinforced, and ultimately we suffer and our communities suffer. But welcoming in deep curiosity may lead to extraordinary rewards. I think we'd all agree that curiosity was the impetus behind most of humankind's greatest inventions and most astonishing art, music, literature, and theater. And while we may not be Albert Einstein or Rosalind Franklin, Henri Matisse or Georgia O'Keeffe, Willa Cather or James Joyce, each of us may intentionally nurture a strong sense of curiosity. But for each of us, intentionally nurturing a strong sense of curiosity can lead to expansive and rewarding personal, intellectual, and spiritual growth. As Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, a mind stretched by a new idea does not shrink back to its original dimensions. In his book on curiosity, Dr. Shigeyuka tells the story of his visit to a convent which hosts a program called Nuns and Nuns. That's N-U-N-S and N-O-N-E-S. In a retreat setting, the program facilitates communal, intergenerational, and interreligious discussion around life's big questions. Shigeyuka was invited by a small group of millennial self-described religious seekers who they said were participating in the program in pursuit of curiosity. That's their words. One young woman admits she arrived with deeply rooted negative assumptions about the Catholic nuns, particularly in regard to their vows of chastity. But as the Catholic nuns and millennial nuns shared stories, asked questions, and developed relationship, this young woman and her friends were able to detach their armor of assumptions, biases, and certainties and lean into the beautiful, wounded, complicated nuances that make up each human being and to honor their shared humanity. Not only did this group of millennials come away from the experience transformed, so did the Catholic nuns who had hosted them. The story also illustrates a key point in Shigeyuka's research that, quote, deep curiosity says, I want to understand you. But the minute our curiosity is attached to an agenda or judgment, such as trying to change someone's mind or behaviors, it becomes a game of argumentation and winning rather than a collective quest for understanding, end quote. Sincerely and intentionally engaged, the pursuit of curiosity can be at its best not something that lives only in our minds, but is more so something that stirs our hearts, a gateway to strengthen the relationships we have to ourselves, to each other, and beyond. Igniting our curiosity requires us to ask powerful questions and to listen, really listen to stories, to open ourselves to the natural and human-made wonders of the world, to get curious about ourselves, and to seek out the common universal humanity in all of us. I have always believed that ours is a faith that is not for the faint of heart, because we are forever and always becoming who we may be. And central to that pursuit are the questions that stir our hearts. the curiosity that fertilizes the seeds of joy, of awe, of love, and connection within and beyond what and who we know. For ours is a holy curiosity.
We gather each week reminding ourselves of the power and beauty of the community to heal our souls, open our minds, inspire us to action through the love that is at the center of our faith. Our financial contributions to this congregation allow us to continue to live into our vision of the beloved community here and in the wider world. Please join us in our offertory words. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another, with the people around us, and with the world. I'll now accept your donations. Thank you.
I invite you now to stand as you're able and join us in singing our closing hymn, number 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky. We'll do verses 1 through 3. Our chalice extinguishing words are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. I leave you with the words of Rainer Maria Rilke from his wonderful book, Letters to a Young Poet, published in 1929. I want to beg you to be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and to try to love the questions themselves. Do not seek the answers, live the questions.